Hi everyone, Sandra Vale here at Homesteading Ways, and today I'm going to share with you my tips that I use for getting my seedlings going for the upcoming gardening season. The first thing I'm going to touch on is greenhouses. Now not everybody has access to one. These are portable. They're not very expensive. I don't really use them outside. I use them indoors. I will use them in my garage. Or I had last year I had an unheated sunroom, and I put them in there. But you can use them if you have extra room in any room really in your house. They're nice because they fit all the seedling trays really well. They're not super durable, but you don't necessarily need them to be either if you're just doing seedlings. And you can take them apart or leave them as is and use them over and over again. And you can use them. You can, when you're hardening off your seedlings outside, you just have to make sure to really anchor them down and try and keep them out of the wind. This one's a little bit taller. It has 5 shelves all the way to the floor. This one has 4. I used to have a walk-in greenhouse similar to this, but when we moved, somebody lost half the pieces to it, and it wasn't me. So now I'm using these just to get started. I grow a lot of seedlings, but they can all start at different times, so I don't necessarily have to have a whole bunch of stuff. If you just have a table or, just some shelving in your house, extra room that you can put your seedlings on, that'll work too. Okay, let's get started. First off, I use these little pans here. They're good to put underneath all your containers, whatever it is you choose to grow in, because it'll catch the overflow of water, and then you don't have to worry about water damaging any of your stuff or getting on the floor or whatnot. And as far as what to plant in, there's a plethora of things you can use. These obviously are the peat pots. They come in all different shapes and sizes. Here these are more square. I have the round kind here. Here's a whole nother thing. These are nice because if you're going to plant directly into the garden, you don't have to disturb the root system. When you go to plant these outside, you're going to want them a little bit wet, and maybe just squeeze them a little bit to pull it apart just enough so that it breaks up a little, and that'll make it easier for the roots to spread once they're in the ground. You can use these bigger kind. Some of these I use for tomatoes and other plants that I don't want to transplant, but that normally I will be giving these away to friends and family, or I might be selling them at a flea market, or even from home. But then you have these, and I use quite a few of these. I try to save these year to year. If they get a little damaged, there's a few in here that are kind of messed up. If I can fix them, I will. If not, I'll just skip over them. But the rest are still pretty good. This is a big one. This one holds 72, and you will need to pot up from these. These are pretty small. So once they get usually their third set of leaves, I'll pot them up. The first set of leaves on a seedling are called seedling leaves, but the second set of leaves are the true leaves. So after the true leaves and another set pops up, that's usually when I'll pot up from here. You don't have to get something with 72 like this. I think they also sell them in sizes of 24 and 50. And with any of these, when you're first starting your seedlings, to help them germinate, you're going to want to put a lid on them, like that. You can use saran wrap too, or plastic wrap if you don't have one of these. That helps to keep the humidity in and really the moisture, and that's what your seedlings are going to need to germinate. And another thing I use are heat mats. Here are a couple of them. They fit really well. They're designed to go underneath these trays here. They don't get very warm, but they get warm enough to keep the soil a nice warm temperature. I'd say, depending on the temperature of the room or the area they're in, right around between 65 and 70 degrees. And that's the optimum soil temperature you want when you're starting seedlings. With the heat mats, they really do help with germination, but once your seeds have sprouted, once they've broken out of the soil, you're going to want to take these away. You don't want to keep them on when the seedlings are actually growing. This is strictly for germination. Then, let's move on to lighting. Now, most seeds don't need light to germinate, but once they're out of the soil, they will. You can use something like this. I used to use this a lot. My husband has quite a few of them. It has this nice little clamp thing on there so you can maneuver it, move it around however you want. But I switched to these because we got them on sale one year, and they're actually designed to grow plants. And here's a package of one that I haven't opened yet, but I have quite a few of these. You can hang these, if you have one of them greenhouses I talked about, you can hang these with chains, or my husband used zip ties. And you want your lighting to be 2 to 3 inches above your plants. Not any higher than that, because then it makes them stretch for the light and they become very leggy. And that's usually what will happen if you're growing them just in a windowsill. They'll keep reaching for the light, and instead of having a sturdy stem to them, they'll get long and spindly. And that's really not good for the plant. You want to build up that sturdy stem. So the more light you can get on your plants, well, you don't want a giant spotlight or anything like that, but you want light on your plants and you want them close. And as the plants grow, just keep readjusting your light to be 2 to 3 inches away. And with the lights, I use a timer. You plug this into a timer. You can get these pretty cheap. I think they're $5–10 at the store. And I keep my plants 16 hours, my seedlings, with light for 16 hours a day. They need the 8 hours rest time. You're just kind of mimicking summertime light for them, and the 16 hours does the trick. Also, you're going to want a mister or a sprayer. Death to seedlings is letting them dry out. You cannot let seedlings dry out. Now, if you don't have a lot going on, you can use a smaller mister like this. And with these little cells, these little seedling cells here, sometimes the mist is all you really need. Enough to keep that soil moist, and you do it several times a day. Because if your soil stays too wet, then you run the risk of damping off, and that's where your beautiful little seedling all of a sudden just flips over and dies. It'll be dampening off right at the base where it meets the soil, and that's because it's been too wet, and it's like a form of fungus. So you don't want that, but you certainly don't want them drying out. If you have a lot of seed trays to do, you might want to get one of these. I don't remember how much I paid for it, but you just pump it like this, and it does a great mist, but more powerful and more wide, so you can cover a lot more area. If you're going to be doing bigger pots like this, then I would suggest more of a watering can. You could use something like this or that during the day to help keep everything moist. But bigger pots you are going to need, especially as the plants get bigger, you're going to need more of a watering can for that. And what I like to plant in is just your basic potting soil. I don't get a special seed starter or anything else like that. Some people plant in a soilless mixture, and that's great because it will help prevent damping off, but there's very few nutrients in those mixtures. And normally you wouldn't fertilize seedlings. They don't need it. They don't need really fertilizer until you get them outside and in the ground. But with the soilless mixture, if you want to add a little bit of nutrients, you can water down a little bit of fish emulsion compost tea, worm tea. You can look even in your store for something organic, but you're going to want to make it weak, and you only would do that maybe 1 to every 2 weeks, because you don't want to overload them. But if you want to give them that little extra because they're not getting anything from soil, then go ahead and try it. Oh, and by the way, when you're going to do a bunch of this, usually I use a big canning pot. You want to get your soil wet before you start planting anything, because some of them now, you know, they'll be filled up and then you start pouring the water and then they're only like halfway full. So get it wet when it's in here. You can judge it better, and then fill your pots and then add your seeds in. You're going to want some gardening books. This is an oldie, but I really love this one. This is from the Reader's Digest. It has some great information, some wonderful graphs and photographs, and it has a really good chart on what plants well together and what doesn't. Now, some of your plants are going to need to be planted early because you have to start 8 to 10 weeks ahead of time. Other ones, not so much. You can stagger them, and you might be putting some out early to harden off. You might be just starting other ones. That's okay. Get your seeds together, check the packages, check your books, whatever it is you need to do to find out how many weeks ahead of the last frost date you need to start these. You know, if you're going to be selling any of them in markets or whatever, you're going to start way ahead of everybody else. But if you're doing it for your own garden, just try and get your dates as well as possible. You don't want to plant too early and have all your work go down the tubes because you got a frost. But if you start too late, that can be a problem as well. Now, I'm thinking I went over everything good. I don't think I forgot anything. One thing I didn't want to forget, when you're doing your seeds, it can be super hard to remember what you just planted. And then a lot of times when they're coming up, many plants will look alike, so it's very hard to keep track. Make sure you have a good marking system. I mark at wherever I'm starting my seeds. So, you know, if this is tomatoes, I'll mark tomatoes, and then I know this whole row is tomatoes. Same with beans and whatnot. Sometimes I get messed up a little bit, because if I'm doing this row and then half of this row, I'll always mark at the beginning, so make up your own system if need be. So then I'll know that these are tomatoes and these are tomatoes, because beans don't start until here. So these are cheap. You can use popsicle sticks. People make their own all the time out of all kinds of material. Use a good Sharpie and just mark away. Thanks for watching the video. I appreciate it. Please comment and subscribe. That would be great. It was wonderful talking to you, and you take care.